Have you ever wondered how one person can transform talent acquisition? Meet Ryan Joseph, Vice President of Recruiting at Recruit Group. Ryan is a champion recruiter with a 7-time President's Club recognition and over 127 placements at a Forbes 50 recognized firm. If that's not enough, Ryan has also been honored by the Women in Security Forum. She has also received the top 3 Recruiter of the Year recognition by Recruiter U. Her recruiting roadmap column in the Security Business magazine offers a fresh and authentic voice that inspires all HR professionals across the globe. With a journey packed with hard work, sincerity, passion, and wisdom, Ryan's story delivers actionable insights for every professional in the industry. This is a must hear podcast for every HR practitioner. It is my honor to welcome Ryan Joseph to Simply Awesome People. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's jump straight into it. What was your decision, or how did you choose a career in HR?
I wish that I had some fantastic reason behind jumping into this, but the truth is that I sort of fell into HR. I didn't know what I wanted to do after graduating college. And I think a lot of people necessarily or don't necessarily go to school specifically to become an HR leader. But my mom actually had a family friend who ran this recruiting agency, and he was looking to make a hire. And I had no idea what recruiting held or talent acquisition, but I was excited once I spoke with him about, how he gets to impact companies as a strategic partner, help them grow, help them find the right people to scale. And honestly, the matchmaking aspect of it, the cultural fit assessment, that's really what got me excited.
Wow, it's incredible, especially knowing that you did not have any background in HR, and then here we have such a great recruiter with you. So thank you so much for sharing that. A related question: do you think there are or there were any specific personality traits that made you successful, or made it easy for you to be successful in your role early on?
Yeah, I think, I was a very curious person, from early on. So I think more than a lot of maybe young candidates, I questioned why, or I asked why. And, I think it really takes that because number one, it helps you to truly understand, right? Like why do we do it this way? And, why are we, focused on this so much? And, that's a piece I think that's really, really critical. I also think HR professionals have to be incredibly resilient. You from candidate rejection to having to deliver bad news on one call and jump into a benefits call on the next. And, there's so many balls up in the air that you have to be okay dealing in hard conversations. And I think that you really have to work on that from a young age.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. Any personality traits that you had to either modify or keep aside to be able to to be able to succeed, or at least sustain initially in your career?
Yes. I'm very, very impatient, and it's just built that I'm built that way, really. I had to learn early on that you have to really slow down and listen, right? Um, that's where the trust is built with people, is when you can really get to the root of what is going on, listen, and have honest conversations. And I think, at such a young age, I'd be like, "You got the offer," or, what more is there? Let's move this along. But that's where the real facts come in, is when you can say, "Hey, what is holding us up on this? And what is your hesitation?" And that was hard.
Awesome. No, thanks for sharing that. I can't tell you how many of my personality traits I had to keep aside, especially initially in my career. And but I think that's really insightful, especially for someone that's new in their career as a recruiter.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. What's been the biggest highlight of your career? I know I already know of all of the awards, all the recognitions. If it's one of those, maybe if you can elaborate or share something. What's one thing that you're most proud of in your career so far?
Honestly, the biggest highlight I'd say is the first time that someone thanked me. And I mean like truly, truly thanked me because in what I do, I mean, there's days of calls and cold calling and trying, different ways to reach out to talent. And it's so hard to get, really good people. It's honestly only happened like maybe two or three times out of everybody that I've placed. And it's really impactful. That keeps me going on my toughest days in sourcing. I really do think about what they say and remember it. It sits with me deep.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. And an unrelated question. When do you think someone should start thinking of a career in HR? At what point in their journey, their educational journey, or their personal professional journey? When do you think they should start thinking of a career in HR?
I don't think there's ever a time where it's too early. I mean, sometimes when we're really young, like in middle school and high school, we think we're going to be, something that we don't even go to college for, right? We change our minds so much, but there's so much people skills in HR that you have to have. So I'd say if you're in high school, you should start exploring that through volunteering, seeing if you like helping people, seeing if you enjoy working with different types of people. You can also take psychology classes because it gives you a lot of perspective into how people think, right? And what makes people tick and motivators. So you can take a lot of classes geared towards that. But I think you could do it as early as high school. College, though, I think you should definitely start thinking about it. I don't think we are, as a society, thinking about HR enough and at that age.
Makes sense. Thanks for sharing that. How important do you think having a mentor in your career is? And do you think it helps to have one mentor or multiple mentors in your career?
You should definitely have multiple. It's okay if you only have one, but then you only get that one person's perspective. And there's many ways to do things successfully, right? So it's nice to get perspective of multiple people, go to them on how they would solve a problem, because sometimes you'll talk to three people and you'll get three different answers. And overall, I think, yeah, having a mentor is excellent because it helps you grow in your career faster than if you were to figure these issues out on your own. You might make mistakes along the way that your mentor could possibly help you avoid.
Makes sense. Any example that you can remember of a mentor giving you some advice and then you kind of course correcting or changing the direction of what you were planning to do?
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, my mentor, he'll tell me all the time, he'll give me a constant reminder of just, hey, remember, not everybody thinks like you do, right? And so you have to take yourself out of it. It's not about what you think, it's about what they feel. And so that's so important. I think that daily reminder sometimes, sometimes it's not as often, but it's a good lesson.
Makes sense. Um, so a lot of my friends, right, when I'm conversating with them, I don't know if that's your experience as well, but they feel that, HR delays things, HR, especially recruiters, ghost people, and incidentally, with most of my conversations with my friends, I feel HR has a bad rep. Do you agree with that? And if yes, why do you think that is so?
Well, I will say it's a half truth, right? Like any field, there are going to be people who are just not good at the job, right? And then there's going to be people who are excellent, right? And those people will still get a bad rep sometimes in HR. Remember, in HR, we are the messenger for decisions that we didn't always make, right? And so we're the face of the no, right? We're the face of the layoff. We're the face of, hey, this is the new policy that we're rolling out. And to be fair, I think that sometimes people who have a struggle of balancing all of these things that maybe get stretched a little too thin, that's where you start to see that, okay, the feedback will lack, right? And that's not really fair to candidates or to anybody interviewing for a job. But most of the time, I would say we get stuck doing a lot of dirty work for the hiring manager, right? And I think if a lot of people got to see it from our perspective, they would see that sometimes, a hiring manager gets on an interview with you and you walk away from that feeling like it went really well. That hiring manager may go on vacation the next day and, come back 4 days later and say, oh, I didn't want to move them forward. And now we have to go and kind of massage that, right? So I'd say we get to be the dream wrecker in a lot of scenarios, but also you have to be able to have tough conversations and deliver bad news. And I think a lot of recruiters or HR professionals that stray away from that, that's when the ghosting steps in because it's like, oh, do I really want to do that right now? Do I really want to call them with this bad news? I think that's where it comes in. So I think we could all do a better job of maybe training on delivering hard news or bad news or, kind of coming in and having a tough conversation, and maybe that would help.
Makes sense. Thanks for sharing that. My next question is a slightly deeper question. Um, what's the definition of career growth for you?
I A lot of people think it's about title. And for me, it's about impact, right? When I'm recruiting candidates, I don't care if you were the senior, enterprise architect or if you were an analyst. I want to know about what did you do? Did you drive a better decision? Did you save the company money? Did you improve a process? So for me, it's about the impact that this person had.
Makes sense. My next question is a question that I think might have been asked to you a million times. Any tips on building or creating a good resume?
Yes. Um, I think a lot of people focus on the function of the job, right? So if you're a salesperson, you'll put in there that you prospect, that you go out and, find new potential leads. Don't talk so much about your function, talk more so about your results. People want to see, numbers. People love to see numbers. So if you have efficiency, improved efficiency by 26%, that's way more valuable than saying, hey, we built a new process. People want to see the results. So I would say under every career position that you've made, you should have at least one bullet talking about something you did that you're proud of the results.
Makes sense, and thank you. A subset of that question, in the past few months, I've actually been talking to a lot of students that are now pursuing internship or first-time job opportunities. Um, a lot of them do not have substantial career experience. Some of them do not have any career experience for that matter. And many a times they're asking this question about what do I put in my resume? Should it be
Mm.
someone told them that your resume should be more than one page? Someone said that no, it has to be a one pager. Um, I know most of your work is into executive hiring, but from your experience leading teams that also work with young or newer individuals in the industry, how should a college student's resume be, especially if they're just starting off their career?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely good question. So with younger candidates, more junior candidates who have very limited real working experience. What people are looking for in you is involvement, right? So we want to see how do you didn't just go to college, you were part of, some type of club, or you went to National Honor Society or a fraternity, a sorority, you were, joining um, math, related clubs if you were a math major. So I think that's the key. It's not just about going to college, but people want to see that you're a well-rounded individual, specifically too with your high school experience as well. So don't leave that out, and don't feel like, you know, there's nothing for me to put on here. There is. People want to see that, you've joined organizations, or even if you've just joined membership organizations like IA, HSS, or, BOMA, things of that nature. People just want to see that you're paying attention to the field you're looking to get into.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm actually going to carve this piece out of the podcast and maybe share it either on Instagram or YouTube. I think it will be super beneficial for so many young individuals that are just starting their professional journey. Thank you so much for all that insight. Um,
Or
yeah. Do you also pursue any other passion outside of HR as dedicatedly?
I I love to train younger people that come in, or more junior candidates, that employees that we bring on. I love to show them the things that I've learned along the way, the impatience, and how to kind of grow from that, specifically around recruiting. I think it's great because it's so niched. What we do is, finding candidates that are the top 10% in their field. And so listening for that and having that ear, that's something I'm really passionate about. I think giving them also the opportunity to hear things from other people's perspectives, and not always insert your own perspective, is cool to see people grasp.
Makes sense. Thank you. How do you see HR evolving, and how do you also use AI in your day-to-day work?
Yeah, AI has been fantastic, right? We've used it for better messaging, right? To get candidates more attracted to our openings. We've used it for sourcing, right? Um, I think that it's got a real awesome ability to give us data points that maybe we've not even considered looking at before, as, metrics. And I think that HR function will become more data driven due to it over time. That's my
Makes
hope.
sense. Any go-to AI tools that you can recommend for HR professionals?
Yeah, I mean, but outside of ChatGPT, there are a few who um, will use AI to help you source candidates. One of them, I believe, is called Juicebox. And you can put in your criteria, and honestly, it's a lot cheaper and a lot better than LinkedIn Recruiter. So it's great for helping to find the right fits.
Makes sense. Speaking of LinkedIn, any best practices that you would like to share with individuals on how to craft their LinkedIn profile, how to use or how to leverage the connections on LinkedIn?
Yes. A lot of us are connected to a lot of different people on LinkedIn, but we're not truly connected to them. So when it comes time to looking for a job, sometimes applying is not enough. Um, Absolutely, you should be reaching out to these connections, you know, I would say quarterly, and just saying, hey, we should stay connected, or, maybe have a virtual meeting with them, because that's how your network really grows, especially when you don't get to be in front of them in person a lot, if that's the type of job you're in, which is more office based. Because you never know when you might need to lean on your network. So, besides just posting on LinkedIn, it's good to make sure you're staying in front of your community.
Makes sense. I think that's important piece of advice that I feel a lot of people discount is many people just have a LinkedIn profile. There's very less traction from their end on the profile. And at the end of the day, it's a social media platform that's running on an algorithm. And I think as individual users, they need to also help the algorithm for the algorithm to make the connections, recommendations, also bring forth their profile to people that are looking for similar roles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
What do you think is a recruiter's role in shaping the culture of an organization?
I think it's critical, right? We are there when companies tell us, here's our culture today, and here's where we want to get it to go. And you're only going to make cultural change through people, right? It's not through policy, it's through people. And so I think it takes somebody with a really keen ear to listen to that forward thinking hiring manager and then find those traits in human beings, right? And it's sometimes it's when people say, what does culture fit? We want to make sure they're a culture fit. I want to know what that really means, because are we looking for more of the same type of people? Are we looking for people who will do what we say and not question it? Or do we want people to bring new ideas? Do we want them to challenge us? It's a really key thing, and it shapes companies' growth more than people think. Because if you want people to come in and do things the way that you've always done them, you're not going to necessarily get new, fresh ideas all the time, and it will stall growth a little bit. So I think you have to really listen to what they're saying when they tell you about the culture. It's not just about, we have a pizza party and we do a yearly trip to the Bahamas and we do this. It's not about that. It's about what happens when someone doesn't like your idea? What do you do? What happens when someone brings a new idea? What happens there? So it's very key, very key.
Thank you. That's very interesting. Um, a number of times in my conversations with founders of startups, um, they at that juncture or in their journey in the startup, they're not able to afford a full-time HR department or a recruiter or a team of recruiters. Let's assume it's a startup with 5 people that wants to hire more people. Any
Mm-hmm.
tips or advice for such founders, especially uh, for them to support their recruiting strategy?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. A lot of firms out there will offer, if for clients that maybe are early stage who can't pay a fee, maybe you can use their services on an equity model, right? They'll pay through equity. Um, that's one option. There are also cheaper options where you can say, hey, just find me the list of qualified candidates and I'll go after them myself, but I don't know where to start, right? So that's usually a cheaper option, but also you can really lean on your network again and on LinkedIn and put out a posting on LinkedIn that's relatively inexpensive. For startup companies, especially around tech and software, I recommend LinkedIn over Indeed or ZipRecruiter. But you can really get out there. The algorithm always finds a way. So if you're using, your network the right way and having people help you get the word out there, I think you should still be able to find a good candidate.
Makes sense. I think you make an interesting point. And what's funny or what's also interesting is even when I'm conversating or interacting and working with leadership members from larger organizations, a lot of their executive hiring also gets um, traction from their own interactions with other people in forums, sometimes through LinkedIn or them just coming across somebody through a referral. So I think yeah, there's a lot of value in leadership members, regardless of the size of the organization, to also
Mhm.
be out there, continually be ambassadors for their organization to attract top talent. Yeah.
Yeah.
A related question, agnostic of the size of the organization. Let's say a firm wants to hire your team as their executive recruiting team. What should the firm do to best extract the highest amount of value from your team?
Great question. They need to be ready. They've got to be prepared. We are not the team that you just engage our firm haphazardly. When you engage us, we're serious. I'm going to ask you thought-provoking questions that probably no other recruiter, has asked you before. Because there's many people in my profession that will, they're frothing at the mouth to get the job, right?
Yeah.
I've walked away from more business than I've said yes to because I didn't believe they were serious, or, they just don't have what it takes to attract top talent in this market. So what I mean by that is you need to come prepared with the compensation structure up front. We can't go out and that be a 11th hour conversation. You need to be prepared on why someone is going to leave your competitor to come work for you. And I don't mean, well, we're a smaller company and you're not a number here. No, I mean deeper than that, right? If someone is really, really, really content in their job, I have to capture them in the first 30 seconds. What am I going to tell them that's going to do that? So I'd say you have to be ready to play and you have to take this seriously, because if you're not, I can't want it more than you guys want it, right? So if you're not ready, truly ready to make this hire, we're going to vet that out ahead of time so we don't waste each other's time.
Makes sense. And yeah, I think that's very valuable. Any on a lighter note, are you able to share any funny incident or story from your career so far?
Yes. The funniest day I've ever had actually was we had a candidate who was going to an on-site interview and actually pulled into the parking lot and somehow managed to rear end the CEO's car. And not only did he rear end him, his bumper somehow became attached to the CEO's rear bumper and it pulled off of his car completely.
Oh,
So, but funny enough, he did actually end up getting the job. But and the nice thing was that some of the team members came out and helped him to put his bumper back on to get back on the road. So that's he called me right before the interview, and I have to be honest, I was not very optimistic about how this was about to go. But
oh my God.
when he left and got the job, I was like, okay.
Oh, that's very funny.
Yeah.
And honestly, while it's funny, I think a lot of credit to the CEO and their
Yes.
team to still give that person an objective and a fair opportunity, and at the end of the day, giving them a job, because life
Yeah.
could happen to anybody, and no one decides or plans for accidents. But
Of course.
this is hilarious. Thank you so much for sharing that.
No problem.
Um, what is that one piece of advice that you would like to give or share with any HR professional in the world for them to be successful? That one single piece of advice.
I would say keep asking why. When you don't know the answer, the moment you stop asking why or stop digging deeper is when you don't get to the real story, behind the people. And I think we don't do that enough. We hear something we didn't like, or even worse, we hear something concerning and we stop digging, and that's where you have to dig a little bit deeper.
Thank you. Any a lot of times what I also notice is no matter how senior a person is, they tend to get really disheartened after a rejection. Most of the time, individuals go through several rounds. And for the most part, there's always more than one person in the final round. And obviously, you have to say no to, or you have to say yes to just one person.
Mhm.
What's your advice to those candidates, regardless of their experience in the industry, who tend to feel disheartened? And this is from your wisdom that I've always benefited from. Any advice to such professionals to process that disappointment uh, in an objective manner? I won't say positive, but any advice
Yeah.
on that?
It's funny that you say this. One of my candidates just found out he wasn't getting the job for a senior level position. Um, and he said, I'm beginning to think it's me, right? And he did get a little disheartened. I immediately called him because he texted me that, and I immediately called him and I said, look, this just wasn't the right one, right? And everything, I believe everything happens for a reason. When you're looking for a house and you don't get that house, there's a reason you didn't get that house. When you don't get the job, there's a reason you didn't get it. You may not see it right now, you know, but there's a reason. And sometimes we're being sheltered from something, that maybe wasn't the right thing. And sometimes it's because there's something better waiting for us around the corner. But keep your head up, keep interviewing, keep going. The right thing is close. Every no, you're closer to the right yes. So, and it hurts sometimes, right? Nobody likes to be told you were the number two choice, or you were the runner up, you didn't get it this time. All that stinks, especially after several rounds where you've invested, you've usually put together maybe a business plan. But just know that it's not always you. And, if you've made it to the final round, it just means that they resonated with someone else a little bit better than you, but they thought enough of you to bring you to this round. So it's it's tough. It is tough for sure.
Thanks for sharing that. I know in your day-to-day job and work, you always have so much on your plate. Any advice on organizing or prioritizing work and tasks, especially for younger professionals?
Yes. Um, you have to certainly block the time for the things you don't like to do, because those are the things that will fall off first of your responsibilities. So, for instance, delivering, tough feedback, right? If that's something you don't like to do, that's the first thing you do in the morning, 8 a.m., right when you get to your desk. It's the first three calls you make. Because if you to get bad news, later that day, and you left it for 4 o'clock that day, you're definitely not doing that. So I think it's really, really critical that whatever is the lowest on your mental priority, that's the first thing you knock out in the morning.
Makes sense. Awesome. Ryan, I can't tell you how valuable this conversation was. And there's so many quotes and insights that I feel every listener will benefit from. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. With this,
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being part of the Simply Awesome podcast today. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you and all the best to you. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks.